guess you should have a hammer. All right, let's call to order Sparks City Council meeting of August 9th, 2021, with a roll call. Madam Clerk.
Mayor Lawson.
Here.
Council members Abbott.
Here.
Vanderwell.
Here.
Anderson.
Here.
Bybee.
Here.
Dare.
Here.
Acting City Attorney Duncan.
Here.
City Manager Cruz.
Here.
We have a quorum, thank you.
Okay, let's, we have the invocation with Rajan Zed.
I shall be reading in Sanskrit from ancient Hindu scriptures, some as old as 1500 BCE, then interpret in English. Om Bhurvavah Swaha Tat Saviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Na Prachodayat. We meditate on the transcendental glory of the Deity Supreme, who is inside the heart of the earth, inside the life of the sky, and inside the soul of the heaven. May He stimulate and illuminate our minds. Astoma Sadgamaya Tamsoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityurmamratam Gamaya. Lead us from the unreal to the real, lead us from darkness to light, lead us from death to immortality. Tasmada Sakta Statam Karyam Karma Samachara Sakto Hai Charan Karma Parmapnoti Purusha Karmane Vahi Samsiddhi Masita Jankadya Loka Sangreha Mevapi Sampashankar Tumrahasi. Strive constantly to serve the welfare of the world. By devotion to selfless, one attains the supreme goal of life. Do your work with the welfare of others always in mind. Om Saha Navavtu, Saha Nomanaktu, Saha Viren Karba Bahai, Jasvina Vaditamastu, Ma Vidbisa Bahai. May we be protected together, may we be nourished together, may we work together with great vigor, may our study be enlightening, may no obstacle arise between us. Samni va kuti, samna hirdhyani va, samna mastuvo mano, yathava susa hasti. United your resolve, united your hearts, may your spirits be at one, that you may long together dwell in unity and concord. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Om. Thank you.
Thank you. Please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Bybee, will you lead us, please?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, please be seated. Okay, we'll move on to public comment, item 4. If you're wishing to speak, we'd please have you fill out a speaking card and give it to the clerk. We're going to start off with Lilith Barron. Are you here? Yes, there she is. Followed by Holly Wellborn. Thank you. Sit down if you'd like.
Hello, my name is Lilith Barron, Lilithbaran, for the record, representing the ACLU of Nevada. I would just like to comment on item 7.1, the Community Advisory Board, and commend Officer Crawforth for responding thoroughly to our questions about the matter, and encourage him to outreach far and wide as far as transparency that this board is being put together so that members of the community have ample time to become a part of this committee. I would also like to encourage him to reach out to folks that have been directly impacted in your communities for this effort. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Ms. Wellborn?
Is that working?
Yes, ma'am.
Great, thank you. My name is Holly Wellborn. It's a pleasure to be here, Mr. Mayor and Council. I am the Policy Director for the ACLU of Nevada, here to provide some brief public comment and a little bit about who we are and what we do. I had an interesting conversation with the City Attorney's Office this afternoon on a particular agenda item. We don't often get a chance to interface with Sparks Police, but under the leadership of, the Sparks City Council, But under the leadership of your new police chief, there are interesting opportunities like what Ms. Barron just presented for us to get involved and to be a part of those conversations. It's quite routine for us to reach out to the city attorney's office, to reach out to the police chiefs, to reach out to all of you in our routine, activities. We're an important stakeholder in this topic. But I do want to share, I'm a 13-year resident of Washoe County. The first 6 years that I lived in this community, I lived in Sparks. I'm very familiar with the community. I was accused earlier of being part of an organization that's pushing a national agenda, that there's not a connection to the community here with anything that we're pushing, which couldn't be further from the truth. These issues happen here. A young Black man died at the hands of police here in this community. We're all aware of the Micaiah Lee situation. And we're an important part of helping shape that policy, and we look forward to continuing these conversations with the police chief so you can make the most and best informed decisions as you move forward in the area of policing. I signed up for another agenda item 9.5. Should I talk about that now or wait until you address that item?
Still have a minute and a half, so go ahead.
Great. So as for that item, that is what I had called to troubleshoot with the city attorney's office, and I did have a chance to talk to the police chief and understand the grant proposal that you're looking for. What we understand about that grant proposal is that it is for 4 additional uniformed officers to engage in community policing activities. Our guidance and what we would present to a council would be to not go forward with a proposal on uniformed officers, but to instead perhaps apply for a grant that would partner with a community organization that already has trust built within a community, to perhaps hire social workers to follow some of something like the MOST team, but where there's not as much of a connection with the police department if you're looking to build trust within those communities. We have an open door with the police chief. We had a wonderful conversation earlier today, and I look forward to hopefully joining this advisory council and continuing this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. John Anderson.
I'm nervous.
Don't be nervous.
My name is John Anderson, live in Sparks, 1800 Prater Way. I'm here with some concerns about our neighborhood park, Deer Park. In the last 2 or 3 years, it's went downhill tremendously, mainly with the drug usage going on there, with the campers around the grill areas, the sleepers up in that top pavilion, which I have no idea what that's even built for. It's some steps going up to a concrete pad and it has a roof over it. And I've never seen anything used in there in 11 years I've been there. The grill area, it's overtaken by the night campers, and the daytime, I shouldn't characterize them and saying druggies, but that's what happens there a lot. When the bathrooms are open in the summertime, that's where all the activity goes on. I go to the park 4 to 6 times a day with my dog, and all day long it's 2 to 3 people going into the bathrooms at one time. And at other times there's someone standing outside the door and letting people in like it's a Congo line there when a new supply comes in. But my main concern is not to take knee-jerk reactions. I think something needs to be looked at long-term to solve the problem, because right now, emailed Donald many times, and he's helps me out, and he contacts the police department. They come. They've been doing more patrols at night now. We appreciate that, but they can't babysit. They have more important things to do than someone camping at the park or whatever. So, my idea is that the bathrooms get closed in Labor Day. I think they're open Memorial Day to Labor Day. And after that, they have no place to go bathroom. Last winter, they were using buckets and bottles all winter long. They go to the grill area to keep fires warm over the winter time. So I don't know if there's anything we could do to possibly temporarily fence off those areas that they use when the park is closed for the winter. I mean, it's not closed, but when it's not being used as much. But I think something needs to be done long-term there, because it doesn't get better. It's, if the police come in and do what they can, and so it's good for 1 or 2 days, but then it slowly builds back up and you see what goes on there. So I just challenge all you, maybe sometime take a walk through there and see what goes on. because it's happening. And I'm not sure if it's just Deer Park or all the parks, but I do go down to the River Park, Rock Park. That used to be kind of bad a couple years ago. That's cleaned up really nice now. I don't see much happening down there anymore at all. And hopefully something like that could happen over Grass. And the other side of the coin, the pool is there, there's kids there all summer long at the pool. So the drug usage, something should be done with that if possible. So I'm just asking for your help, if you can look into it down the line and see if there's something that can be done. Thank you.
Wow, that scared me. So, city manager, I'm sure is aware of this, issue, so. Yes, sir. We'll address it. Is there anyone else in the public wishing to speak at this time? Okay, seeing none, we're gonna move on to approval of the agenda, item 5.1. Looking for a motion. Any additions? We haven't gotten to voting yet? All right. Mr. Abbott,
I move to approve the agenda as submitted.
Mr. Anderson.
I second that.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please vote. Almost messed that one up. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
I was ready to say nay. I like that.
All right, 6.1, consideration possible approval of minutes of Spark City Council meeting for July 12th, 2021. Any additions, subtractions, corrections? Not, I'm looking for a motion. Okay, I got a motion, or Ms. Bybee?
I move to approve the minutes of the Spark City Council meeting for July 12th, 2021 as presented.
Mr. Dare?
I second that.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. All right. Moving on to announcements, presentations, recognition items, and items of special interest. 7.1, Boards and Commissions vacancy announcement, the Sparks Police Advisory Committee. Mr. Kreutz.
There are 7 vacancies for our newly created Sparks Police Advisory Committee, each for a 2-year term. 3 members shall represent diverse or multicultural groups that are reflective of the social and economic demographics of Sparks. 1 member shall be a high school or college student. 1 member shall represent the business community in Sparks. 2 members shall represent the community of Sparks at large. Members shall either be residents of or business owners of the residents or businesses in the Sparks. Sorry about that. If selected, members must be willing to participate in the Sparks Police Department Citizens Advisory or Citizens Academy and undergo a background check. Applications for each of these 7 positions will be due Friday, August 27th by 5 p.m. The best way to get to the application is through the city's website. That is www.cityofsparks.us/get-involved. That's just one big word. Once you're there, click on volunteering for a Sparks Board, Commission, or Committee, fill out the form, and press submit. Thank you, Mayor Lawson.
Thank you. All right, moving on to item 7.2, presentation by the state of Nevada, utilization of fiscal recovery funds from the American Rescue Plan Act. Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Zach Kona, and I have the pleasure of being your Nevada State Treasurer.
Who that is behind that mask?
Yes, sir.
Sorry,
Hi, everyone.
Zach, you're there now.
We're a little incognito today, I suppose. Okay, and so we have a PowerPoint presentation, which I believe you can all see, and I'll click through it here. Probably like that. Okay. So thank you very much for taking the time to have us here today. We find ourselves at the beginning of an unprecedented opportunity between the money that's coming into the state, money that's coming into the local municipalities, cities and counties, non-entitlement units, as well as money that's coming into programmatic opportunities through the American Rescue Plan. We have more than $6.7 billion to try to build the Nevada we deserve. And so the governor and myself and legislative leadership believe that we have a responsibility to make sure that we coordinate and communicate as much as possible with local governments, let you know the process that we are undertaking, and then hopefully we can work together to create the best outcome at the end of this process. We're also committed, of course, to making sure that the process is collaborative, transparent, and effective, like I said. A little bit of background information. HR 1319, of course, the American Rescue Plan, signed on March 11th, 2021, includes almost $2 trillion worth of aid across hundreds of separate programs. As of 8/4, we have identified funding for 67 of the 105 programs that we found so far. To say that this is a complex piece of legislation and implementation, I think would be an understatement. So Nevada's share, just to give kind of an idea of the buckets, that large magenta or pink bucket at the bottom, that $2.7 billion, that was wired to me on June 4th at the State Treasury. Sort of an interesting afternoon when you get $2.7 billion wired to you. The local general aid, about half has been dispersed to Nevada cities and counties and non-entitlement units. Non-entitlement units came through the state. Money that went, for instance, to Sparks came directly, and you received the first 50% of that, the second 50% to come next year. It's the other buckets that I want to call your attention to, basically the top half of that circle. $232 million specifically for healthcare, $338 for housing, $134.6 for infrastructure, economic development at 92, almost $1.2 billion coming in for ESSER or K through 12. There are a lot of different buckets of money here outside of the money that we're receiving directly, and the coordination around those buckets becomes really important. That money falls into three buckets. We don't have to spend a ton of time here, but there's non-discretionary aid, which is money that comes in to plus up existing programs. We don't really have a choice in how that's used. It just goes to increase that program. Quasi-discretionary is something like rental assistance, right? And here in Sparks, the Reno Housing Authority has been helping with the CHAP program, which is that statewide program that our office has been coordinating at the state level. And we had some decisions to make in the rental assistance process. We were able to decide, for instance, that money would go to landlords directly as opposed to going through tenants to landlords in order to increase the speed. But we couldn't choose to not spend that money on rental assistance and use it for something else, right? And then there's discretionary aid. That's the state and local, that's the capital projects. Those are the dollars where we have the most flexibility in how we spend it, and I think where a lot of the intention will be. Now, towards the end of the legislative session, in order to try and call our shot a little bit and create a sandbox for these dollars to live in, the governor, myself, legislative leadership put out something called the Every Nevadan Recovery Framework. And if you haven't had a chance to read it, it's available online at nevadarecovers.com. You can also just Google Every Nevadan Recovery Framework. It's a 7 or 8 page PDF that does a couple of things. But one of the things it does is it sets forward our bands of prioritization. And this is one of the discussions that we're having a lot as we talk to other city councils, county commissions around the state, which is we understand there are immediate needs and there are long-term needs. And the direction from the federal government, specifically the White House and the federal treasury, is to make sure that we are all addressing both. And so we want to start first with Nevadans' basic needs: food, shelter, healthcare, making sure people are safe. Number two, the community, the family. How do we make sure that education is supported, that those basic community needs are there? Then the economy. How do we put people back to work, train them for new jobs, build a more resilient economy? And number four, quality of life. How do we fix some of those systemic problems that have just, frankly, been underserved for decades, that now we might have the capital in order to be able to make a difference there? We also set forward 7 priorities for strategic enhancement. I don't think any of these will be a surprise. They include things like enhancing jobs and retraining, making sure that K through 12 education is more successful, modernizing and enhancing government services. If this feels like a large sandbox, it's intended to, right? We wanted to make sure that we had the flexibility as guidance came in to be able to spend the money however the state tells us. So what does that mean? An unprecedented amount of money deserves an unprecedented process. And so in combination with legislative leadership in the governor's office, we kicked off last week a statewide listening tour, the Nevada Recovers listening tour, which will include more than 75 events in 75 days. Events like this, where we're basically saying, hey, here's the state's process, and events like the one we'll have later today with small business owners talking about the type of things that they could use, A, to help them in the immediate, and B, to help them in the long term. The goal there is to collect as much information as possible, and that information will fall into 2 types of buckets. One are direct requests for help. And in this, we're saying effectively to Nevadans and to cities and to other governments, tell us the thing that you need, what the problem is, and how you would fix it. And so on that NevadaRecovers.com website, there's a link where you can submit an idea for a project. And some of those ideas come in and they're very baked, right? A 501c3 says, gosh, I deliver food in this area. If I had 3 more refrigerated trucks and I had an additional facility with this, and here are the architectural drawings, I could double my capacity and I would serve this many more people, and here's how I would fund it going forward. Very baked ideas. And we're also getting ideas that say, I live too far away from fresh food. I live too far away from healthcare, right? I had to cross state lines in order to get healthcare for some of our communities. Those ideas, they don't know what the solution is to their problem. They just know they have a problem. And that's okay, because in step 2, we're actually able to resource those ideas and figure out a way to solve that problem. There's also a survey, and that survey allows Nevadans to tell us their preferences, right? They want to spend more money on K through 12, they want to spend more money on food insecurity, they want to spend more on housing, they want to spend more on, and that helps us get a general zeitgeist, right? So that as we move forward, we have a good idea of what folks want. Those 2 things together move into step 2. In step 2, we're going to resource those ideas, effectively taking ideas and making them into programs and plans. So that person who said, gosh, I don't have any healthcare in my community, we're going to look and say, well, based on the census tract that they're in, we could potentially put a federally qualified health center there, which would have long-term revenues available from the federal government, right? Because we obviously don't want to create something that we don't have money to pay for in a couple of years. And so then we take all of those ideas, we bucket them by segment, right? So a K through 12 conversation, a higher education conversation, food insecurity, housing instability, economic growth, job retraining, et cetera, and we come up with one plan in each of those areas, probably with many component parts, some that will be geographic, some that won't, but one plan for each of those areas. Then we do what is probably the hardest and most technical piece of this, which is connecting those plans to the buckets of money. As we go back to our pie chart in our minds for just a moment, those 2 bottom buckets, that 2.7 and the 1.1 billion, think of those as cash. They're pretty flexible. Now, they're pretty flexible, and we have 150 pages of guidance, 40 pages of FAQs that have been amended 12 times since they were released on May 17th. So deeply bureaucratic, but pretty flexible, right? We also have 103 other buckets. Think about those like gift cards. They're for very specific things: childcare, rental assistance, K through 12 learning loss, right? And so we need to make sure that all the ideas that come through in step 2 from step 1 are connected to the bucket of funding, connected to the gift card that is most restrictive. Because the worst thing that could happen through this process, of course, is we don't do something that we wanted to do because we use the wrong bucket of money to fund something else, right? And so that process happens in step 2, and that's stakeholders from all around the state. That's members of this council, if you'd like to participate. That's members of your government. That's members of your community, members of all sorts of other communities. And step 3, after finalizing that roadmap, we get to the designing and the creation of new programs, right? As someone who put together a couple of programs, our team put together a couple of programs during the pandemic, things like PETS, right? Our Pandemic Emergency Technical Support Grant, the largest small business grant program in the history of the state, the rental assistance programs and the rest. We know that it's easier to expand something that already exists versus starting up something new, right? So we're going to look for ways to use existing programs to help do this work. Why are we doing this? Well, we want to make sure we're talking to the communities that have been impacted the most. We can hear from them directly about what the need is. That's also been the request from the White House and the Treasury. Part of this is calling your shot and saying, here's the problem that we've identified, here's how we think we're going to solve it and what that solving looks like, here's the way we're going to do it, and then here's the outcome. And we need to turn in all of that as we submit for the audit that will follow using these dollars. Number 2, it allows you all and us and everyone else to coordinate and communicate so that we try not to duplicate functionality. During the middle of the pandemic, there were a lot of different small business grant programs that came out. Some of them, mostly on the southern side of the state, but some of them were contradictory, right? And if you applied for one, you couldn't apply for the other one. And if you applied for B before A, then you could apply for both. That's very confusing to small business owners. We know, especially during the middle of the pandemic, the more confusion around these programs that exist, the harder it is for people to actually use them, right? We've seen that on housing assistance. We've seen that anywhere else. If we can avoid that, all the better. Here's the second thing. There are some efforts that will be happening at the state level, things like making sure that broadband gets to every community and resident of Nevada, that functionally will probably be more effective if they're handled as one plan for broadband as opposed to 17 counties, 30 cities, putting together their plans for broadband in their community, right? It would be better if we coordinated and collaborated And frankly, the state has more money for broadband and for almost everything else, right? So we can probably do that as effectively if we did it together. And number three, it provides an opportunity to capture ideas and issues that might be unallowed under guidance, but could be available under future programs. This is a really important one. I think sometimes in our community, certainly we've found that there are ideas that are good ideas, but they never get from the idea stage into the plan stage because that costs money, right? And if there isn't money to do the work down the road, why spend the time to get the plan ready to go? Because you know it's never going to go anywhere. For the first time, the state has enough resources that we can, and are directed to by guidance, use some of those resources in order to take some of those ideas and make them plans. Now, it could be that an idea that comes into this isn't allowable under the guidance put forth by the American Rescue Program. But we also have money coming in through the American Jobs Plan when that infrastructure bill passes, approximately $2.5 billion coming into the state of Nevada if it passes as currently written. We've got the State Infrastructure Bank, right, which is going to build roads and bridges and create jobs, jobs, jobs. And we have an opportunity to potentially fund things out of general fund in the future. But the goal here is to get the ideas on the table, make sure everybody knows about them, right? This is a time to fix problems. A couple of things to remember. We need your input. Every idea that will get funded out of the American Rescue Plan money, every idea that gets funded out of this process starts as a form. If I want to build something, I submit a form. If your acting city attorney, Mr. Duncan, wants to submit something, he submits a form, right? If the governor wants to submit something, I probably submit a form for him. But everybody else submits a form, right? So that we can track every idea from its creation as an idea into the discussions that help make it into a plan, into the discussions around which ideas get funded, and then out the door until it actually happens. We'll be able to track them all the way through. That's important from a transparency perspective. It's also important so that later on we can say what thing worked and what thing didn't work. So on our website, nevadarecovers.com, there are a number of different ways to give feedback and suggestions, and we encourage everybody who's watching today and anybody who might watch this later and anyone you talk to do that. That is the way to get an idea in the system. That's the only way to get an idea in the system. Number two, don't self-censor. We'll see, and I know this happens a lot, you'll read a little bit about the guidance and you'll say to yourself, this thing I want to do isn't eligible, right? And then you read something else about the guidance and say, gosh, I think it is eligible. Don't worry about that. There's 150 pages of guidance on that one bucket. Each bucket has its own guidance around it. They all have different deadlines and rules and requirements and reporting and everything else. Tell us what you need and how you would fix it, and we can connect it to one of the buckets on the back end. Right? A team of attorneys in the Attorney General's office will be able to look at it and figure out what the right bucket is. We have outside consultants who are going to come in and help us make sure that we're spending the capital as effectively as possible. Don't self-censor. Share the message with your friends, family, and neighbors, and of course, ask questions. We're here to help, and because this is something that none of us have done before, there are plenty of good questions out there for the asking. Some additional resources, just so you have them, that's my email, as well as some information about the two biggest buckets. And happy to take any questions. Thank you again so much for having us here.
Questions from the council?
I have one.
Ms. Bybee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you so much for being here, Zach. Appreciate the presentation. Timeline, there's a lot of work that needs to go into this, and rightfully so. It's a lot of money, and I would agree. I think we definitely need to coordinate amongst our city, county, and state to make sure we're not duplicating and we're not missing things. I mean, that's just the smart way to utilize these funds. But what is your goal or projected timeline? It's 75 days of getting the input and then the time to process that. Everyone always accuses all of us in government of taking way too long to get things done. So what is the quickest we could move, and what is your aspirational hopes of money actually starting to go out and into programs?
So when we started this process, the governor said something that I think is really correct on this, which is spending is easy and investing is hard. The money from the Treasury has to be allocated by December 31st, 2024, has to be spent by December 31st, 2026. So if you were to say, I'm building this building, and you made that decision at the end of 24, you would then have 2 years to complete the process and spend the money. We're going to spend 75 days on this listening tour. That doesn't mean that if an idea shows up on day 76, it gets bureaucratically excluded. We all know that we can do better than that, right? So we'll include ideas as they come. After that, a similar amount of time will come into that stage 2, resourcing those ideas, growing plans, throwing a lot of resources at that. And then after that, we'll have a process where we go back to the interim finance committee and their federal funds, smaller working groups, and those groups will work through the process so those dollars can get allocated. So I expect you'll see some decisions coming out around Q1 to Q2 of next year. Now, that doesn't mean that money can't move faster, and I think that's an important point. During the legislative session, for instance, there was consensus that building a new UI system, a new unemployment insurance system from the ground up, replacing the DETR system, was deeply necessary. We didn't need to do 75 events in 75 communities to understand that the unemployment system failed Nevadans, right? Hadn't been properly resourced in about 2 decades. So that decision was made during the legislative session. We also made the decision to pay back the $330 or so million that we borrowed from the Unemployment Trust Fund at the federal level, which will reduce taxes, or at least keep taxes at the same level for our small businesses around the state. That was a decision that was made during the legislative session using these dollars. Since then, we've made decisions like Vax Nevada Days, right, which was a $5 million commitment in order to encourage more people to get vaccinated. We're also using some of those dollars to do pop-up vaccination clinics and do other things. So quicker ideas will move more quickly, but I think in a good, large scale, the larger plan will be 75 plus another 75, and then we'll start going through the legislative process.
Okay, so I guess that's a follow-up. Do all of these, use of these funds have to be approved by the legislature?
Yeah, so during the legislative session, a bill called SB 461 was passed. We colloquially refer to it as the waterfall bill. It lays out those strategic priorities as part of that legislation. Kind of the bottom of the waterfall is the Every Nevadan Recovery Framework. And so all of those dollars will go through the interim finance committee.
Okay, so that was my next question. So we don't have to wait till they're in session. It can happen during the interim with the finance committee?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you.
Other questions from the council? Mr. Dare?
I just really want to say thank you for coming out to our meeting today. One of the things that the more that I can cheer our state on and just making sure that we're coordinating together, that's probably been the hardest thing for the last year and a half, truthfully. And so we appreciate that you're here, and we thank you for asking, but I do hope that we continue to have those conversations at large on a regular basis. So it's not much a question, but a thank you and an encouragement that this is actually what we really do need to make sure we're working together, because sometimes it's hard, it doesn't feel like we are. So thank you. So thank you.
Any other question from the council? So I just want to put my 2 cents worth in here for everybody, is mental health is an issue we have not done very good on as a country, as a state, and as a local, entities either. So in my mind, that's probably the number one thing that we've seen, and it has come to the forefront more now with our using this last round of money to build a homeless campus there. And the mental health problem, we figured out 75% of people that are homeless have mental health problems. So that would be my priority, and I'm gonna definitely let you guys know on the survey for that, because to me, it's a shame that you have to live in that environment where you're being taken advantage of and drugged, daily. And we see it, and it's just, to me, it's a horrifying thing to have to go through. So that'll be my priority to help you guys with. But I think it's something that we as a society have done a horrible job on since 50 years ago. And it's time that we address it. And we have a windfall of money. So, thank you.
Absolutely, and I think that's the way to think about these funds, right? That they not only can deal with the immediate need, but they can help fix some of those systemic, long-term underfunding issues that we've had since forever. That's the kind of idea we need. Big ideas are just fine. Now's the time for them. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else from the council? All right, thank you, Mr. Conan. I appreciate you coming and talking to us today. All right, I'm going to move on to item 7.3, Proclamation Secret Witness Day. Ms. Vanderwell.
This is going to be fun.
Do we have anyone here from Secret Witness, by the way?
They can't tell you.
Wow, I stepped right into that one, didn't I? It's a secret, we can't tell you, okay. Thank you, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Whereas the City of Sparks recognizes the valuable contributions of the Secret Witness Program for Reno, Sparks, and Washoe County, hereafter Secret Witness. And whereas Secret Witness is a private, nonprofit organization of concerned citizens who are dedicated to solving crimes and improving public safety by gathering information from the public that would not otherwise be available. And whereas Secret Witness aids law enforcement in preventing crime by providing a source of information to help law enforcement identify and locate witnesses, suspects, criminals, and fugitives, which helps to reduce crime and make our community safer. And whereas Secret Witness provides a means for the public to communicate information anonymously about criminal and civil offenses and fugitives without the threat of retaliation. And whereas Secret Witness keeps the identities of people who provide this essential information protected and anonymous. And whereas Secret Witness provides rewards to qualified secret witnesses in return for information and to promote and encourage the flow of information from the public. And whereas Secret Witness saves the citizens of Sparks several $1,000s each year in police investigative time by supplying crucial tips to solve crimes. And whereas since its inception in 1979, Secret Witness has been a highly beneficial crime-fighting organization helping to solve thousands of crimes, including more than 40 murders in the region. Now, therefore, I, Ed Lawson, Mayor of the City of Sparks, Nevada, do hereby proclaim August 12th, 2021 as Secret Witness Day.
And since it's a secret, we won't have a picture with them either. Okay, let's go on. Item 7.4, commendation. Recognition of the Silver State VFW Post 3396 for Sparks, Nevada, being selected as the 2021 National Outstanding Community Service Post. Mr. Anderson, and if you want to bring me a couple of speakers to sit up front, and then the rest of you, we can obviously see you front and center. I appreciate that.
All right, it's my honor to read this commendation. Whereas the Silver State Veterans of Foreign War, or VFW Post 3396 in Sparks, Nevada, has been selected as the 2021 National Outstanding Community Service Post and recognized as the hashtag Still Serving Post for the month of July 2021. And whereas the National Outstanding Community Service Post Award is given in recognition of the dedication, service, and support of VFW Post shows for its community. And in the last year, VFW members contributed more than 10.3 million volunteer hours, donated more than 20.8 million to community service projects in their local communities. Whereas VFW Post 3396 is committed to suicide prevention and awareness and works with the Nevada Department of Veterans Services and the Change Direction campaign. And this past year, more than 30 people attended the Change Direction Day, which included a 2-mile walk and a run to promote physical, mental, and emotional well-being. And whereas VFW Post 3396 members' efforts to care for fellow veterans and their families have raised $150 for Gold Star flags and banners, more than $17,500 for a variety of veterans programs, $1,500 for veterans in need, and the VFW Post 3396 also adopted a Nevada National Guard unit to support service members in the area, donated needed resources to local teachers, and held a D-Day walk to remember the fallen and honor our nation's heroes. And whereas the City of Sparks is proud to honor VFW Post 3396 for all of its members and what they do. We're thankful for every post and a member who is the hashtag Still Serving, and deeply appreciates each veteran who continues to answer the call of duty. Now, therefore, Ed Lawson, Mayor, City of Sparks, Nevada, do hereby join with the Sparks City Council in commending the Silver State VFW Post 3396 in Sparks, Nevada, and all the members for their tireless dedication to serving veterans, legislative advocacy, and military community service programs. Congratulations.
You want to to say a few words, go right ahead.
All right, thank you, Mayor and council and city leaders. My name is Jerome Washington. I'm thankful for the opportunity to be here, along with our members who do all this great work and as well as our auxiliary. We're just thankful to be able to be here and be recognized for the work that they do continuously for our community. They are here every time we're called upon, and sometimes we just show up, and I'm thankful for all of them. As you read the entire list of what we're doing within the community, the three main focus for us is benefits assistance, is getting those benefits for the veterans and the family members who served our great nation, who are our heroes. The second thing, of course, is suicide prevention. We're big on that. We are part of the Mayor's Challenge in conjunction with a lot of the community leaders to help combat that mental health and suicide prevention that a lot of us veterans and family members are dealt with. And then also community service is big for us. Obviously, we were awarded, I think, for the team here for all their tireless efforts of working and doing what we have to do to be able to give back and still serving within our community. Again, my name is Jerome Washington. I'm joined here by David Souza, who's essentially our public affairs officer, and I'm just thankful for being here, and I will allow David to tell the rest, and we'll be real brief about this.
Dave Souza, for the record, quartermaster for the VFW in Adjutant. One of the big things that we did not include in our bio is we give out 5 $1,000 scholarships for VA nursing students every year. That scholarship is on behalf of Jerry Lazari, and he was a very big advocate in the community. 2 of the major events that we have coming up to let everybody know about is third Thursday, August 19th. We are doing a food bank, Northern Nevada fundraiser. You can go online and donate cash that way, or come by Engine 8 Urban Winery. We'll have buckets and everything out there for people to donate. The other thing we got coming up is the 20th anniversary of September 11th, working with the city and with Councilman Anderson and Councilman there to work out a plan to lay 3 wreaths down at the Sparks Memorial Park, which is behind the Sparks Heritage Museum, and also working with Operation Battleborn Never Forget hike. The hike will start when the first tower was struck, and it will end at 1700 at the Sparks Marina at the memorial area. We asked the mayor and anybody else that wants to walk with us. At the final leg, they'll be able to have opportunity to walk with us. But that is going to be carrying a little over 7,000 dog tags of all the military that was lost. But we're also going to recognize those first responders and police officers that gave their life up 20 years ago.
Mayor Ron Smith.
Oh, and a couple of our members, we have Mr. Wes Duncan, part of your staff, and former Mayor Ron Smith was one of our members.
That's all we have, and we thank you all for it.
Thank you.
Where's that sign gonna go? What's that about?
This is part of our campaign for the National Outstanding Community Service Award that we just won for our national recognition for the community service. And so it's still serving, just a little banner we have.
Do you want me to be in the picture?
Please.
In fact, if everyone wants to be in the picture. We can have you guys here.
Well, let me have you guys come up here.
You want us to come up there?
Yeah, just come up on the dais. Yeah. And we're probably gonna have to have permission to put this up.
Yeah, we're gonna have to get super close.
I think the mayor's gonna be here.
We're gonna have to get really close together.
Close together.
Squeeze it.
Close together. Try and we need that inch towards the center. There we go. There we go. Take some of these on really quick.
Smile.
Everybody looking right here? Okay, hold on.
Shall we smile?
Jerome's about to bust here.
Shall we smile?
Yeah, I think you already did mask on, unfortunately. Okay.
That's right. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
What's right in my face?
Thank you for all you guys do.
It's yours.
Appreciate it.
All the time.
So one of the things there, we're gonna have to.
Thank you for everything you guys do.
This is a road stuff. Well, these kind of things, put them up and beg forgiveness.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
See you later, girl. If we could do something on the highway or something by an exit. Yeah, we need to give them with,
Thank you.
John Erickson. John Erickson. Because it's right there on the.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for everything.
Yeah, put it on, picture of it on the. They talked to Diane, she knows the billboard.
okay.
No, that'd be cool to do.
All right, we're moving on to consent items. Anyone wishing to pull a consent item? If not, I'm looking for a motion. Ms. Vanderwell,
I move to approve consent items 8.1 through 8.3 as submitted.
Ms. Bybee,
I second the motion.
any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. All right, moving on, to item 9.1. Consideration, discussion, and possible approval of a settlement agreement in French versus City of Sparks et al. And the case in the estimated cost of $68,388. Ms. McCormick.
Good afternoon, Mayor Lawson and members of the City Council. For the record, I'm Allison McCormick, your Assistant City Manager for Management Services. I'm before you today seeking approval of a settlement agreement in a case arising from a wrongful denial of pharmacy benefits from our Pharmacy Benefits Administrator. The plaintiffs in this case are a retired city employee and his wife. They were denied, our former Pharmacy Benefits Administrator, or PBA, denied coverage of a medication that she had been on for many years. The retired city employee and his wife sued both the city and the PBA. At a recent mediation, the following settlement agreement for the claims against the city was worked out between the parties with the help of a mediator who spent roughly 12 hours working with us to get us here. The city would pay the plaintiffs roughly $26,000 in cash and would also pay 2 years' worth of group health insurance premiums, which is valued at about $37,000. The city would also pay half of the mediator's fee for a total value of approximately $68,000. The insurance premiums, it could be different if rates go up or go down. The city will just be paying those premiums, essentially moving money between two different city funds to pay those premiums for 2 years, regardless of what those premiums are. If we see a decrease in premium costs, the city would save money there, and if we see an increase, the city would owe a little bit more, but roughly $68,000 is the expected value given current premiums. In addition, there is language in the settlement agreement essentially memorializing language that exists in our current contract with our current PBA, that PBA won't second guess a prescribing physician when determining whether something is medically necessary. So essentially, if a doctor says that Ms. French's medication is medically necessary, the PBA will have to abide by that. Staff does recommend approval of this settlement agreement, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the council? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion. Mr. Dare.
Yes. I move to approve this, I move to approve the settlement agreement in French versus City of Sparks et al. Case number CV 1900476 at an estimated cost of $68,388.
Ms. Vanderwell.
I'll second.
Okay, I got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. And just from my standpoint, this was the right thing to do, even though it's not our fault. It was the right thing to do for our employee. All right, so moving on. 9.2, consideration, discussion, and possible approval of the One Nevada Agreement on allocation of opioid recoveries to establish a methodology for allocation of a future opioid, that's a mouthful, related recoveries between the state of Nevada and various Nevada counties and municipalities. Mr. Duncan.
Good afternoon, Mayor Lawson, members of the City Council. For the record, Wes Duncan, Chief Assistant City Attorney. I'm here on behalf of Eglett Adams, who couldn't make it here today, for approval of the One Nevada Agreement before you. As this body knows, in December of 2019, the City Council voted to retain Eglett Adams as outside counsel for the ongoing national opioid litigation. And the purpose for that was that so the individual counties and cities and the state can file their own lawsuits to try to get the most out of the settlement or potential settlement on behalf of the citizens of their independent jurisdiction. Eglett Adams, in coordination with the Nevada Attorney General's Office, has proposed the attached agreement for the allocation of the pending Purdue Pharma bankruptcy that's currently going on and any future litigation or settlements that might occur in the future. Essentially, this framework that they've given you in this agreement sets out the methodology for how cases will be allocated in the state. So the breakdown of the state under that proposed methodology, any future bankruptcies, or like I said, any negotiated settlements would be allocated based on the MEE, which is a morphine milligram equivalent, the opioid use disorder under the National Survey on Drug Use and Health, and deaths due to opioids under the National Center of Health Statistics. Then any of those opioid recoveries would, after subtracting the lead litigator costs and certain Medicaid costs that occur in the state, be allocated with 43.86 going to the state of Nevada, 38.77% going to local governments, and the final 17.37% would go to the Nevada Medicaid match going for the individual counties. Under this methodology and this One Nevada agreement that's in front of you, the city of Sparks share would be approximately 0.616% of the total share of what the state of Nevada ends up getting. And so this agreement that's before you is separate and apart from the national opioid litigation that you might have heard that's going on. And that's all I have for this presentation. Stand by for any questions.
Question from the council. Okay. No questions? I'm looking for a motion. Ms. Bybee.
I move to approve the One Nevada Agreement on allocation of opioid recoveries, AC 5798.
Mr. Abbott.
Second.
Okay, I got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, sir. 9.3, consideration, discussion, and possible approval of a contract, AC 5793, with ADS Environmental Services for flow monitoring services for the Truckee Meadows Water Reclamation Facility in the amount of $54,792.00. I love it. Mr. Drinkwater.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Michael Drinkwater, Treatment Plant Manager, here before you today seeking your approval of a contract with ADS Environmental Services. They monitor the flow into the wastewater treatment plant at various points in the community. We do that for two reasons. One, our permit requires us to measure it and report it within a certain level of accuracy. And two, in order for us to properly proportion the bill between the cities of Reno and Sparks, we have to measure the flow so we know who is discharging how much. In order to accomplish that, we have to measure the flow in 6 different places within the collection system. ADS has been providing this service to us for more than 10 years now and has done so adequately. We have a great relationship with them. We would like to continue that relationship. Because this is a professional services agreement, it's not required to be bid, so we're asking the council to approve the new contract. This is not we're not extending a contract. This is a new contract, but if approved, it would be for a period of 1 year. There are 3 one-year mutually agreeable extensions contained therein, so if both parties agree, we could go for 3 additional years. This is a normal operational expense for the treatment plant. It is in our operational budget, and as such, the cost will be shared between Sparks and Reno proportionally based on the flow, which right now is approximately 35% to Sparks and 65% to Reno. The $54,000 you see is the total cost of the one-year agreement. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, questions from the council? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion. Mr. Anderson.
I move to approve contract AC 5793 with ADS Environmental Services for flow monitoring services for Truckee Meadows Water Reclamation Facility in the amount of $54,792,000. $792, excuse me, yes.
And no cents.
I was trying to make it
You threw
54 million. They
extra
would have been
zeros
very
in there,
happy,
yeah.
yeah.
That 3 extra zeros would have made a difference. Ms. Vanderwell.
Second.
So I got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. And motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Item 9.4, consideration, discussion and possible approval of applying for a federal emergency management agency building resilient infrastructure and communities grant to fund a seismic risk evaluation of the Truckee Meadows Water Reclamation Facility with estimated matching funds of $100,000. Casey.
Paul Chaparral for.
Oh.
Good afternoon, Mayor.
Didn't
City
recognize
Council.
you.
Yeah,
You guys
Casey and
got
I
the
look a
same
little bit
haircut.
alike.
Yeah.
He's a little thinner and a lot younger.
My eyes are bad.
But with the masks. Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. My name is Paul Chaparral. I'm the safety coordinator for the Truckee Meadows Wastewater Treatment Facility. I come before you this afternoon seeking your approval to apply for a Building Resilience and Infrastructure and Communities Grant, BRIC for short, because it's a whole lot easier. This is issued through the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA for short, because it's also easier, in order to perform a complete seismic evaluation of the Truckee Meadows wastewater facility. This grant requires a matching contribution from the city. It's a 75-25 split, the city's portion being 25%. The total estimated cost for the project is $400,000. The city's part would be $100,000, and FEMA would supply the other $300,000. The funds have currently been allocated in our FY22 budget. They're under the operational costs, which is covered by our flow split agreement with the city of Reno, which, as you heard from Mr. Drinkwater, is a 35-65 split. This project is important to the community as Tumworth is listed in the Washoe County Emergency Action Plan as a piece of critical infrastructure. The project will allow staff to better evaluate and understand and address concerns the plant may have in the event of an earthquake. As you all know, Nevada is probably number 3 in the country for seismic activity. So this will allow us to start creating a list of things that need to be addressed, provided we apply for the grant and are able to get the grant. If you have any questions?
Questions from the council?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Bybee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had one question. Have we had a full seismic risk evaluation done of Tumworth in the past, or is this something new?
This is the first time we've done it, so it's something new.
First time ever? Wow. Yeah, that's kind of amazing, given the seismic activity we do have in the region. It's just not something we were concerned about, or greater concern now and better technology maybe to be able to measure?
It's a very large project, $400,000 project, so finding a type of grant that would actually fit this to be able to address it was part of the problem. The realization that there's an issue being listed in the Washoe County Emergency Management Plan also had a lot to play with it.
Okay, thank you. Anything to add, Mr. Martini?
If you don't mind, Council Member
No,
Bybee.
go ahead, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'm John Martini, your Assistant City Manager for External Services. I think to your first question, is this the first time? So for all of us, we all are pretty aware of Tomorph. It got started basically before I was born, and it's been built and added to. So to your question, as each of those structures were being designed, they were designed to the code of their time. So we're going clear back into the 60s here. So I think Mr. Shapiro has done a great job of finding an opportunity in a place and time to invest some money through a grant to kind of take a look at where the plant is today in its totality, do the analysis so we can find out what we don't know, or, understand how resilient the facility could be should we experience strong ground motion in the future.
But to your point, everything that was built, as it was built to code,
Of
which
its
would be
time.
an earthquake code, whatever year it was, whether it was this year or whether it was 40 years ago.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Dare.
So my question is, what does that even mean? And I say this, that I get that we can go back and we can look at some codes of what we did or didn't do, but there's no way for them to really know what happened. What is it that actually this money spent on besides a stamp from a group who says we're okay? And I'm not trying to be crass, but I'm just trying to say that, I know we have the shake tables at UNR, that you could actually put something on and you can see what it does, but we can't do that with our plant. So are they gonna go in and just inspect stuff? Are they just gonna compare? Because they can't really necessarily show us, right?
Yes, Michael Drinkwater, Treatment Plant Manager. You're correct, you can't actually simulate the earthquake, but what you can do is evaluate the ground, the type of soil that the plant sits on, as well as what we call the maximum credible earthquake based upon our proximity to faults, what kind of faults they are, how big the fault might be, and estimate a ground motion, and then look at the facility, how it was built, and what type of seismic resistance it was built with, be that there's a couple of large categories like shear walls or moment frames, whatnot, and estimate how those would behave during an earthquake and whether they're adequate to withstand that estimated earthquake. But that's for a building, and that can happen in any kind of building, particularly this one. What we also have are reactors that are full of water and their concrete walls, and how they might behave when they're full, half full, or empty during an earthquake. Also, large runs of large diameter steel or iron pipe. So a lot of mass, long and skinny. If it starts moving in a particular direction, it potentially could tear itself apart. While maybe not fatal to the facility, it would put us out of business for perhaps weeks or months, which is obviously not acceptable to the community. So we need to identify those types of hazards so we can mitigate them in future construction.
Good. Thank you. And then, so my second question is, once they come up with what they find, are you gonna come back and share it with us? Because I think that this is obviously one of our most important features in our city is our waste management plan. I've learned how important it is. And so knowing that what we find, I think that'd be interesting for me.
Well, yes, sir. As you're painfully aware, I like to talk about wastewater treatment.
I
so
know you do.
Yes, sir. We'd be happy to share that in whatever format you like. Yes, obviously, this is the first step. Let's understand the hazards, the risks, if you will, and then start checking them off as we fix them or mitigate them to the extent we can.
I got you. Thank you.
Any other questions from the council? I think this is well thought out. We need to do this. When the toilets stop flushing, and we got problems. And they're coming right to our doorstep. So I'm looking for a motion. Ms. Vanderwell.
I move to approve applying for a Federal Emergency Management Agency Building Resilience, Infrastructure and Communities Grant to fund a seismic risk evaluation of the Truckee Meadows Water Reclamation Facility with an estimated matching funds of $100,000.
Mr. Abbott. Second. Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, guys. 9.5, consideration, discussion, and possible approval of applying for a U.S. Department of Justice Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services hiring program grant for 2021 federal fiscal year, October 1 through September 30, October 1, 2020 through September 30, 2021, in the amount of up to $500,000. Chief Crawforth.
Good afternoon, Mayor Lawson, members of the council. For the record, I'm Chris Crawforth, your police chief. Before you today is a request to proceed with an application process for a Department of Justice COPS grant, which would add 3 officers and 1 sergeant to our staff. This will utilize, much as the last one, a 75% federal funding matched with a 25% city funding. Essentially, a simple way to look at it is the city would be funding 1 position from the get-go, and then 3 would be funded by the federal government. This is to last for 3 years, and the expectation is that after the 3rd year, all 4 positions would become part of the complement of the police department and fully funded by the city of Sparks. The primary objective will be utilizing the HOPE model, which you're all very aware of, meaning we will be helping coordinate regional resources to families in need within our community, and with a really big focus on trying to assure that the youth in our community are successful to make sure that their families get what they need so that they can get to school and be as successful as they can in life. The primary focus, but not explicitly, will be on residences located to the west of Pyramid Highway, where we have a lot more multifamily houses, and I foresee a lot more need for those services on that side of the city. We look forward to partnering with many of the groups, many of which, like nonprofits and other health and human services, as well as the Washoe County School District. Some of those bonds we've already created through HOPE, so we've already started that. Approval with this should occur next month in September, and funding occurs in October. If we were granted that, then I would be back in front of you asking for your approval to accept that grant and move forward. And I'm here for any other questions.
Question from the council, Mr. Dare.
I just want to thank you for your leadership on this. I think finding these things are very important, and I know that without question, as you work in our community, you definitely approach it in the right manner. So thank you so much. I think it's fantastic, and I appreciate what our HOPE team has done and what a lot of our different community teams have done. And so I think it's the right approach, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Anyone else? I think we've seen how successful our HOPE team is, and I expect that this will be just as successful, so thank you, Chief. All right, I'm looking for a motion. Ms. Bybee?
I move to approve applying for U.S. Department of Justice Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services Hiring Program Grant for the 2021 federal fiscal year in the amount of up to $500,000.
Mr. Dare?
I'll second that.
Okay, I got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, sir.
9.6, consideration, discussion, and possible approval of professional services contract AC 5797 with the Estepona Group Advertising and Public Relations for marketing campaign in both Spanish and English to support local businesses in Sparks impacted by COVID-19 in the amount not to exceed $236,500. Ms. Dool.
Good afternoon, Mayor Lawson and City Council members. I'm Julie Dool, your Community Relations Manager for the record. And I come before you today to seek your approval of a professional services contract with Estepona Group, Advertising and Public Relations for a marketing campaign in both Spanish and English to help support local businesses that have been impacted by COVID-19 in the amount not to exceed $236,500. And the purpose of the campaign is really to highlight and tell stories of our businesses here in Sparks, drawing attention and encouraging people to visit these businesses and spend money in these businesses. And kind of a little bit of background is we all know that 2020 and 2021 have been very difficult on businesses. We really wanted to do something to help these businesses, and Estepona Group came up with some great ideas for really highlighting businesses hardest hit during the pandemic, and that's including restaurants and bars, local retails, salons, gyms, and more. And the stories will just highlight these businesses, how they survived the last year, and really what their recovery process is for the future. We hope that this campaign will really drive consumers to these businesses And Estepona Group has some really fun, creative ideas. They're going to be working with videographers, social media specialists, things like that, that will really come up with fun, quirky business ideas or video ideas, some of which are kind of the ideas of diners, drive-ins, and dives to come in and highlight these businesses. They are calling it Secret Sparks. So some of these businesses that really have been here for a long time, some new businesses, just highlighting them and really driving business to them. So some specific deliverables are the service costs are about $159,000. That's going to include project management, strategic planning, creative direction, copywriting, graphic design, website development, and the Spanish translation. About $77,000 will include the video and photography. That's going to highlight about 10 businesses a month, and it'll include 20 video stories and 4 commercials each month. It's also going to include digital and TV ad buys, printing, signage, posters, and swag. The group also plans to purchase gift certificates from the businesses and experiences from these local businesses that will be used as prizes on social media and giveaways. If the city council approves the contract, the campaign will last approximately 3 months. Upon conclusion of the campaign, the city will own all of the materials produced during the campaign, and we can use any of those assets going forward for any other marketing that we would like to do. The item has not been budgeted, but staff expects to either use American Rescue Plan Act funds and/or to augment the budget at a later time for this expense. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Questions from the council, Mr. Anderson?
Hi, Julie.
Hello.
Just want to say, I think this is a great idea. Just this weekend, talked to one of our local businesses that they are just barely hanging on and hoping to see some more rebound. And obviously coming back to masks and things like that have hampered that a bit. But I think it's a great idea. Just have one question. How are we going to decide which businesses to select?
It's a great question, Councilman Anderson. What the team hopes to do is they want to talk with Yelp to get some information about different businesses. They want to highlight businesses that have been here for a while, but also new ones. So the Only in Sparks idea would be things like, only in Sparks is there a pirate ship that has a business in it? You know, only in Sparks has this business been here for 35 years, that kind of thing. So I will have some input with that, and we're hoping maybe to ask Councilman Abbott, since he has a lot of, he goes
Since
to
he's
dinner
eating at every
all the
business in
time.
Sparks.
So, but
You're gonna have to
really,
go to the tile store and take a sandwich and eat.
but Yelp will be a big help on this as well. And we're hoping to use influencers on social media as well, having them tell stories of their favorite day in Sparks, that kind of thing.
196 businesses have you eaten at, Councilman? 197.
Who's counting?
But no one's counting.
70 bars.
Ms. Bybee?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Julie, I love this whole concept. I think it's obviously the return on that investment can't be measured in a number of ways. Helping these businesses post-COVID, telling fun stories about things that are only in Sparks. We all know that all of us are Sparks proud. A lot of us have very deep Sparks roots, and even if you're newer here, it's just kind of that sense of community that we really take pride in. And so I think really focusing and maybe, getting to know about businesses that even those of us who've been here forever don't know about, but being able to showcase those. And my question you already answered on what type of media it's going to be across, commercials and social media, and opportunity for all of us, I would assume, to share on social media some of the stories. But I'm excited about it. I think it's a great way to help. And I think the American Rescue money would be, I know that's not my call, but makes sense that we would use it for that. So thank you. And excited to work with the Estepona Group on that also. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to say that I do think that as a city, I love this kind of idea, and I'd even say we're in this position now. But I would just say that this is something economic development-wise, very wise for us to do in our region, because what we have at Sparks is really special, something that a lot of other places around here do not have. And so I think it's great, not just now, but something to consider in the future. If we have businesses we know of, can we just email you? How's that work? If we just know somebody we want you to think about, not obviously somebody else is choosing all those, but if we have some ideas for you.
That'd be great. Thank you. Yeah, just email me, please.
Okay.
Mr. Abbott?
I think it's definitely awesome. And, you know, even for someone that's been in all these restaurants, I still find new spots. I went somewhere new yesterday or last week. And I think it's also exciting for all of us to think about what is your best day in Sparks. You know, my best day with you, Mayor Lawson, would be different than if I took my mother out or something, or someone new to town. And, you know, I think
Than she is.
that's true. But I think that's exciting just to keep that in mind when we want someone to come to town that just has one day. I can tell you my favorite 3 places to eat meals at, but to fill in those days, that's going to be different for everyone. So I think it's exciting, super cool, and I'm thrilled to see what happens with it.
Thank you. I'm actually so excited about it. Estepona Group has some amazing ideas, so I'm really looking forward to sharing all of those with you.
It's going to be awesome. I think it's sad that I know how many restaurants that Councilman Abbott's been into, but yeah, I don't think I can gain that much weight. All right, any other comments? So I'm looking for a motion then. Mr. Anderson?
I move to approve professional services contract AC 5797 with the Estepona Group Advertising Public Relations in amount not to exceed $236,500 for a marketing campaign in both Spanish and English to support local businesses in Sparks impacted by COVID-19.
Mr. Abbott?
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much, Julie.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, 11.1, second reading.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the second reading, public hearing, discussion, and possible adoption of Bill 2785 to amend sections 20.04.005 intensity standards and 20.03.040 temporary uses of the Sparks Municipal Code to amend permitted hours of construction and provide an administrative mechanism to permit working outside of the hours of construction for special circumstances.
Mr. Rundle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Finn's finest.
Thank you. Jim Rundle, City Planner, here to present on this item. Thank you, Julie. Mr. Mayor, the Sparks Municipal Code establishes the hours of construction in the city of Sparks, and currently those are 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Saturdays, with no construction on Sundays. Prior to those hours being codified, construction hours were typically regulated through plan developments or through entitlements such as a special use permit. The hours have been consistent and enforced in the city of Sparks for at least 20 years. In 2015, Mayor Lawson, as a councilman, you'll remember, you directed us to create a new zoning code that had flexibility and predictability. One of those components of flexibility was to utilize a temporary use permit to allow for exemptions to construction hours, and staff has been utilizing that. When does staff utilize that exemption or that flexibility? Well, it may be on something for night work that's in the right-of-way. It may be for work that is for a large concrete pour, and the heat or the wind or the humidity is going to be outside what would permit for a good concrete pour. Industry representatives had discussed that while they appreciated that flexibility that staff was working with them, they found it a little bit bureaucratic and cumbersome to have to get that permit, that temporary use permit, every week. Councilmember Anderson, back in November, you requested that City Manager Kreutz bring back an item for the council to discuss on potentially some amendments to the construction hours in the Sparks Municipal Code. And in January, the city manager brought that back, and the city council had a very robust discussion on the item of amending construction hours. We had a very good discussion between council and staff and industry representatives. Ultimately, the city council voted to direct staff to initiate conversations with the development community and bring back an item for discussion with the council. What genuinely was their desires for amendments to the municipal code? So we did that, we brought it back, but prior to bringing it back, we went out and met with the industry representatives. Staff met with the Association of General Contractors, the Associated Builders and Contractors, and the Builders Association of Northern Nevada. We conducted 2 meetings. The reason there was 2 meetings is one of the representatives couldn't make the first meeting, so we conducted 2. We brought that discussion points back to the city council, and staff had narrowed it down to 2 concepts. We brought that back in April, discussing with the council that the desires of the community were, of the development community, were to extend the hours of construction and provide the city manager direction to issue temporary use permits for exemptions on construction hours up to 30 days. Now, during those discussions with the industry representatives, and we touched on it in that meeting in April, the exhibit on the screens right now are the plan development handbooks in the city of Sparks. The handbooks are identified in blue, and you can see that it does cover a significant portion of the northern part of the city of Sparks, as well as the eastern portion. A few handbooks that I want to point out are the legends at the Sparks Marina. That is within a handbook. Stonebrook, that is within a handbook. Wingfield Springs, another handbook. These are areas that we all know as handbooks in the city of Sparks, and those are areas that would not be affected by any amendments to the municipal code. In taking that direction from the city council, we presented what the desires of the development community was, and the council ultimately explained that their desire would be to allow for construction hours of 5 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Monday through Friday, and no changes necessarily to Saturday or Sunday. We took this direction and created a staff report and made a presentation in front of the Sparks Planning Commission in June. The Sparks Planning Commission considered the item and actually amended some of the recommendations of staff. This came after public comment was made by some of the industry representatives requesting that the Planning Commission consider going from 9 a.m. to 8 a.m. on Saturdays. This is what the code would look like if the city council took the Planning Commission's recommendation. And that would be going from 7 a.m. to 5 a.m. So it would be 5 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, and 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Saturday, with no construction on Sunday. Now, another component that I want to talk on that is in regard to this code amendment is temporary use permits and the exemptions that could be permitted by temporary use permit. Again, this would not apply to handbooks. It would not apply to an entitlement. Let's say that a conditional use permit comes in and the Planning Commission adds a condition that says you shall only operate from up to 6 p.m. You would not be able to use the exemptions because it was specifically identified by a public hearing that it would be limited. So where would we use the exemptions? Again, public safety would be an area where we would use the exemptions. Is it better for them to work at night to do the construction, to do the activity where less traffic is around them? Promotes public safety. Installation of roof-mounted equipment. If it's July and it's 103, would it be more effective and better for the workers and better for the roof to be worked on during the middle of the night than it would be in the middle of the day? Placement of structural steel was a request that we include, and we've added that as an item for exemptions. And lastly, I want to talk about concrete pours. I touched on it earlier. We've added a component in the code. If you're coming in to make a large concrete pour, by large, we've identified 10,000 square feet or larger, and it is in the summertime, or it is in a time where it's just hot, or there's wind conditions, or there's humidity. All of those components can be taken into consideration. We've added a component in the municipal code that allows it to be quantitative as opposed to just a discretion of staff. It is called the, let's see, it is an evaporation calculator. We've identified through our work with the industry representatives, through work with engineering, that an evaporation rate needs to not exceed 0.2. So what we have is a calculator that ultimately can spit out when the appropriate time to pour concrete would be. The example that I have for you to look at is if you start this concrete pour at 5 a.m. and I put in the calculator standard temperatures and temperatures rising over time, you can see that the 5 a.m. pour exceeds, the red line is 0.2, it exceeds the 0.2 by 2 in the afternoon. So that would not be an optimal concrete pour. The concrete would not cure as you would want it to. A 3 a.m. start time, which is 2 hours earlier, would permit the concrete pour to be done by 12, and you can see that it is below the red line of 0.2. Why did I pick 3 a.m. and 5 a.m.? Well, because 5 a.m. is potentially the hour of construction that could be amended to with this code amendment. So you can see there still may be reasons to provide staff the ability to allow for exemptions on certain concrete pours. The Planning Commission is recommending the City Council adopt the amended hours of construction and amendments for exemptions to hours of constructions through the temporary use permit and allow those to be up to 30 days. Mr. Mayor, that concludes my presentation.
Okay, question from the council? All right, this is a public hearing. We're going to take comments from the public. I have one public comment from Alexis Motorex. And thank you for putting in the phonetic spelling for me. You got tired of me butchering your name over all these months. I apologize.
I just thought I'd help you out. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. My name is Alexis Motorex with the Nevada Chapter AGC, representing the commercial construction industry in Northern Nevada. AGC is here in support of item 11.1 as Mr. Rundle has presented it. And I have testified to previously before this body, this proposal protects the health and safety of our crews working outside during the hottest months of the year and gives our members the flexibility they need to complete projects in the most efficient manner with the least impact on the general public. And again, I would like to take this opportunity to express our sincere thanks to Mr. Rundle, Mr. Martini, Mr. Erickson, and Mr. Ornells for working through this with us. It means a lot to our membership, and we would appreciate your support. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Anyone else in the public wishing to speak at this time? Okay, I'm going to close it, bring it back to the dais. Questions from the council? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion. This- All right,
It's showing you.
we'll change it around. Mr. Anderson.
Okay, I move to adopt Bill 2785, amending Sparks Municipal Code Section 20.04.005 intensity standards and the 20.03.040 temporary uses to amend permitted hours of construction and provide an administrative mechanism to permit working outside the hours of construction for special circumstances.
Ms. Vanderwell.
Second.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second. See any further comments? Seeing none, please vote. And the motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on. Final public comment. Comments from the public. I had one from Miss Wellborn, but I think she left. Okay. All right, anyone else in the public wishing to speak at this time? Seeing none, we'll pull it back to the dais. And announcements from the mayor, city council, city manager, Mr. Kreutz.
I've got one, if you're willing, and that is to let everybody know that our last Rockin' on the River event is going to be Thursday, August 26th at Rock Park. We will have food trucks and a live band, Whitewater retooled, dancing, and lots of fun. Hope everybody can make it. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone on the council? Mr. Dare?
We just want everyone to know, and we'll announce this next time too. On November 10th at the Sparks Marina at 2 p.m., we will have a celebration of life for Mayor Ron Smith. And when he passed away last year, we didn't get to have a formal funeral or time of that, and so the families requested that. And so just want to let everybody know out there in the community, and we'll put some things out, but it should be a very special time. 2 o'clock, we'll try to have some shade there a little bit, and it should be a nice time. Thank you.
All right, anyone else? Ms. Bivey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to express my appreciation and actually send prayers to all of the firefighters that are out there nationwide, but really regionally here for us. The amount of fires and the devastation and the crews that all of our local jurisdictions are sending, but crews coming from all over the country to help battle, especially the Dixie Fire right now. But Tamarack, there's so many fires right now, and keeping them all in my thoughts and in my prayers as they continue to battle Mother Nature, and also to our law enforcement, to the Chicago Police Department. They had a tragic weekend, and a reminder to all of us how fragile life is and how we've got to continue to support law enforcement. They lost one officer, another one in critical condition, young new mother, and it just breaks my heart. So really prayers to her family, to the Chicago Police Department, and to all law enforcement, and to ours too, keeping them in my prayers.
Okay, anyone else? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 13, adjournment. We are adjourned.
Okay.